They told James the screams weren't real, that the voices he heard every night were just his brain replaying the trauma, a cruel loop of PTSD and survivor's guilt. But last Tuesday, as he walked past the abandoned elementary school on the edge of town, he heard the scream again. And this time, it was coming from inside. It was her voice. The same voice that was supposed to have died in that fire 20 years ago. The same little girl whose body was never found. They told him he was 13 when it happened. But if that's true, why is he only remembering it now? James Felton didn't believe in ghosts. At least, not until he turned 33 and started waking up every night at 3:17 a.m., drenched in sweat, the sound of a little girl screaming echoing in his ears. He lived alone in a second-floor apartment above a pawn shop in Fairfield, a faded Midwestern town no one visits unless they're lost or running from something. He taught history at the local community college, a quiet, decent man with no family, no record, no reason to stand out. And that's exactly how he liked it. But for the past 3 months, something had been unraveling inside him. It started small, déjà vu in familiar places, a smell of burning wood where there was no fire, fleeting visions of narrow hallways and red lockers. Then came the dreams, fire alarms blaring, smoke thick as fog, and that scream. Always that same scream, high-pitched, desperate, young. He tried everything. Sleep studies, a neurologist in Cedar Rapids, a therapist who diagnosed him with PTSD, even though James had never served in the military or experienced any trauma he could recall. They blamed stress, overwork, unresolved grief. But James didn't feel grief, he felt fear. Raw, crawling childhood fear. The kind that didn't belong in a grown man's chest. One cold morning in March, James took a different route to work. He told himself it was because of a traffic detour, but deep down he knew better. He wanted to see it. The building. What was left of it? Fairfield Elementary had burned down in 2005, 2 decades ago. It had been closed for asbestos removal, but a few children had still been inside, including a substitute teacher and one student whose name James could never remember. Her body was never recovered. The town whispered about a gas leak, bad wiring, a failed sprinkler system. Officially, it was ruled an accident. Unofficially, nobody talked about it. Especially not James. As he stood at the chain-link fence, staring at the blackened brick and overgrown courtyard, a sickening jolt of recognition surged through him. His knees buckled. He knew this place. Not from photos. Not from stories. From inside. That night, the dreams got worse. He woke up with bloody fingernails and scratches down his arms. The next morning, the word sorry was written in chalk on his bathroom mirror. He lived alone. On Tuesday, it happened. He passed by the school again, not meaning to, at least, that's what he told himself. The air was dead still. Then he heard it, a scream from inside the ruins. The same voice. The girl. Real. Close. He froze. Then slowly, as if in a trance, he climbed the fence and stepped through the warped doorway. The air smelled like burning. And this time, he didn't wake up. The first thing James noticed was the heat. It clung to his skin like wet gauze, a suffocating warmth that didn't belong in early spring. The building should have been a shell of charred, empty. But as he stepped through the threshold, something twisted. The inside of the school wasn't in ruins. It was whole. He blinked hard. The walls were painted light blue, just like he remembered in his dream. Bulletin boards lined the hallway, some with faded drawings, others with gold star stickers and crooked names in crayon. He smelled floor wax and pencil shavings, the sour-sweet sin of childhood. His heart pounded. "Hello?" he called out. No answer. He walked slowly, shoes echoing on the linoleum, light flickering from long dead bulbs above. A low hum vibrated in the air, as though the building itself was holding its breath. At the end of the corridor, he saw it, room 17B. The doors stood half open. A red construction paper apple was taped to the center, curling at the edges. He reached out, fingers trembling, and pushed it wider. The classroom looked untouched, desks in neat rows, posters on the walls about vowels and weather patterns. But there was dust. So much dust. As if no one had entered in decades. Then he saw the desk. Not just any desk. Hers. Tiny. Wooden. With the name Maddie scratched into the corner. He stared at it, the name ringing like a bell in his head. Maddie. The name cracked something open. Suddenly he was there, 13 again, watching her laugh as she swung her legs under the desk. Her blonde hair tied in pigtails. Her gap-toothed grin. He remembered her voice. Her face. Her blood. James staggered back, the memory too sharp. Too real. He shouldn't remember this. He turned, panic clawing at his throat. And then from somewhere down the hall, the scream returned. That same scream. Higher now. Closer. He ran. The hallway stretched longer than it should have, warping, tilting. Doors blurred past him, each one marked with a single letter. G. U. I. L. T. He skidded to a stop. Room Y. He opened it. Inside was a hospital room. White walls. A single bed. Machines. Beeping. On the bed, himself. But not as he was now. As he was then, 13, unconscious, for in his arm. Bandages on his head. James backed out in horror, breath coming in short, panicked gasps. He turned to run again, and collided with a woman. She stood blocking the hallway, dressed in a faded school uniform, her face pale, eyes wide with recognition. She couldn't have been more than 8. Maddie, James whispered. She tilted her head, then smiled. You remember now, she said softly. He fell to his knees. No, I don't. I didn't. I couldn't. Her voice turned cold. You left me. He opened his mouth to deny it, to explain, to understand, but suddenly, the floor buckled beneath him. The hallway snapped into darkness. The walls peeled away, and James was falling. Straight back into his apartment. Alone. Cold. And clutching a tiny, half-burned name tag in his fist. It read, Maddie. The name tag was real. James stared at it under the harsh light of his bathroom, his hands trembling. The edges were singed, the plastic warped from heat. He ran his fingers over the letters. It wasn't a dream. Couldn't be. He placed it on the sink, backed away, and sat on the cold tile floor. His mind reeled. Maddie. The name unlocked more fragments, flashes of a playground, the sound of her laughter, the way she followed him everywhere back then. His shadow, the teachers called her. She was 7. He was 13. And he couldn't remember how it ended. At therapy that week, he told Dr. Rosenberg he was done lying to himself. There's something wrong with my memory, James said. I'm not just dreaming. I'm remembering. Dr. Rosenberg sat back, hands folded. What makes you say that? James showed him the name tag. He explained the school, the vision, the voices. He expected to be called delusional. But Rosenberg didn't dismiss him. Instead, he nodded slowly. I want to try something, the therapist said. Hypnotherapy. It might help recover suppressed memories, but you need to understand, what comes up could be distorted. Fragmented. James agreed. He had to know. The session was scheduled for Friday. In the days that followed, things got worse. He began sleepwalking. He found muddy footprints in his kitchen, his front door ajar. Once, he woke up outside the elementary school, barefoot in the cold. And always, that voice. You left me, James. Friday came. He lay back in the reclining chair, heart thudding, as Dr. Rosenberg guided him under. Close your eyes, breathe, go back to that day, James. The day of the fire. Darkness. Then flickers. Smoke. Screams. Flashing lights. I was in the hallway, James whispered. I think I was trying to find someone. Who, James? Maddie. The name sent a jolt through him. He saw her, huddled in a corner, crying. She was trapped, he said. The fire was spreading. I told her I'd come back for her. He began shaking. But I didn't. I ran. Silence in the room. Dr. Rosenberg waited. I ran out of the building. I left her. Tears streamed down James's face. A long moment passed before he spoke again. But that's not the whole story. Dr. Rosenberg leaned forward. What else, James? James's breathing quickened. His body tensed. I locked the door. The words hung heavy in the air. I locked the door, James said again, voice hollow. She was crying. I told her I'd come back. But I was scared they'd blame me. I thought, if she wasn't found, no one would know she was there. That I brought her. That I wasn't supposed to. His voice broke. I locked the door and I ran. Suddenly, James bolted upright, eyes wide, gasping. No, wait, that's not she was. The room spun. I didn't bring her. She wasn't supposed to be there. He looked at Dr. Rosenberg, terror in his eyes. She followed me. Outside the office window, the wind howled. And in the reflection of the glass, just for a second, a small figure stood behind James, smiling. The next morning, James awoke to find the name tag gone. He tore through the apartment, desk drawers, under the bed, the trash. Nothing. In its place, on the kitchen counter, was something worse, a child's drawing. Crude stick figures drawn in red crayon. One large figure standing beside a smaller one, flames all around them. Above, In a jagged scrawl, read, "You said you wouldn't leave." His legs buckled. That day, James didn't go to work. He didn't eat. He didn't shower. He sat in silence, the drawing in his lap, trying to remember what the hell had really happened in that building 20 years ago. He'd said Maddie followed him. But why? He started digging. The fire happened in March 2005. The official report confirmed 3 injuries and 1 presumed fatality. Madison Albright, age 7. Substitute teacher Pamela Knox had suffered smoke inhalation. No foul play suspected. No mention of James Felton. He searched deeper: school records, archived newspapers, anything with Maddie's name. That's when he found it. An old photo from a 2005 PDA newsletter. A group of students posing in front of the school mural, arms around each other. James spotted himself immediately. Tall for his age, skinny, shy smile. And next to him, Maddie. But something about the photo was wrong. James stared at it for a long time before realizing what it was: the mural behind them. It was dated 2003, 2 years before the fire. But Maddie was only 7 at the time of the fire. That meant she would have been 5 when this photo was taken. And yet, she looked exactly the same. 7. Always 7. He zoomed in. Her smile. Her pigtails. Her dress. The same red dress from the dream. The same red dress she wore when she died. The photo blurred in his hands as the dizziness came rushing in. He stumbled back, heart racing. Memories were unraveling now, too fast to control. Maddie hadn't followed him that day. He brought her there. Not as a student. As a visitor. He remembered her hand in his, tugging him toward the back door of the school, laughing, asking if she could see the place he always talked about. He'd snuck her in. Told her to stay hidden when the fire alarm went off. He remembered the principal screaming his name. He remembered the heat. He remembered lying. He told them he didn't know her. He told them he'd never seen her before. That's why there was no record of her being inside. He erased her. He had buried her in silence and fear and shame. And now, she was coming back. That night, James didn't sleep. At 3:17 a.m., the smoke alarm in his apartment shrieked to life. There was no smoke. No fire. Just the word, liar, scrawled in red crayon across the wall. And then the smell. Burning wood. Melting plastic. Hair. He turned toward the sound behind him. And in the flicker of the hallway light, Maddie stood barefoot on the scorched floor, one eye sagging from heat, her voice soft and accusing. "You promised." James screamed. Not out of fear, not at first, but from the sudden, searing certainty that he deserved this. That whatever was standing in his hallway, burned and whispering, had every right to be there. But when he opened his eyes again, she was gone. No footprints. No scent. Just the echo of her voice and the word, liar, still bleeding across the wall. He checked himself into the ER the next morning, convinced he was losing touch with reality. They ran blood work, gave him Ativan, called it stress-induced hallucinations. Told him to follow up with his therapist. Dr. Rosenberg listened carefully, more shaken than before. "You said she wasn't a student," Rosenberg asked gently. "Why was she with you that day?" James hesitated. "She was my sister." The words came out hollow, like someone else speaking through his mouth. "No one knows," he continued. "Different last names. Different dads. Mom couldn't handle both of us. She left Maddie with our grandmother in another town. I didn't see her much, but she came to visit me that weekend. She always wanted to see my school. I thought it'd be fun." His voice broke. "I told her not to tell anyone." He leaned forward, shaking. "She wasn't even supposed to be there." Rosenberg nodded slowly, choosing his words. "James, what happened in the fire wasn't just trauma. It was suppression. A complete psychological burial." James stared at him. "You said you remembered locking the door." "I did." "Why?" He looked away. "I thought, if no one found her, if no one knew, I wouldn't get taken away again." Again. James's face twisted with shame. "I was already in foster care once. After Mom overdosed. I was terrified of being split up from her again. Terrified they'd blame me for bringing her. So I lied. I said I didn't know her. I told them I was alone. I told them I ran when I smelled smoke." He looked up, tears in his eyes. "But I stayed. I locked the door behind me and stayed. I watched." A silence fell between them, heavy and stifling. "James," Rosenberg finally said, "you didn't just suppress your guilt. You rewrote your entire identity around it." James nodded. "I changed my name. I moved towns. I made myself forget. But your subconscious didn't. That's why it's unraveling now." James ran a hand through his hair. I think I'm going to lose my mind. Rosenberg was quiet for a beat. Then he said something that made James flinch. You might need to go back. James shook his head violently. No. You need to face it. You need closure. James clenched his fists. She doesn't want closure. She wants me to remember. That night, James stood outside the ruins of Fairfield Elementary once more, flashlight trembling in his hand. The town had long since fenced it off, but he knew how to get in. As he stepped through the back entrance, the air changed again, warm, oppressive, alive. The hallway pulsed with familiar terror. The door to room 17B stood open. Inside, a small chair waited. So did the red dress. And the smell of burning flesh. Then a voice, close behind his ear. You watch me die. James couldn't move. The air was thick with smoke that wasn't there, the flickering lights of the long-dead hallway casting shadows that seemed to breathe. Behind him, the presence lingered, not quite touchable, but crushingly real. The voice again, barely louder than a breath. You locked the door. You looked me in the eyes. His knees buckled. Room 17B beckoned, impossibly intact, as if preserved in the moment the fire first took hold. Everything was too still, the chalkboard unmarked, the desks arranged neatly, a single crayon rolling slowly across the floor like something disturbed it moments before. On the center desk sat a photo. James stepped forward on shaking legs. It was the two of them, Maddie and James, arms around each other, laughing. But someone had gouged James's face out of the photo with something sharp, leaving a torn, angry hole where his eyes should have been. Next to the photo, a box of matches. He picked them up, fingers trembling. Something inside him screamed to run. But he didn't. Instead, he sat down in the tiny chair where Maddie once sat, knees awkwardly tucked under the desk, and for the first time in 20 years, he spoke aloud the truth. I was scared, he said into the dark. I thought they'd take me away. That no one would believe it was an accident. That they'd think I brought you to hurt you. Silence. I didn't mean to leave you. A whisper, almost playful, slid from the dark corner behind the teacher's desk. But you did. He nodded. Tears now. I locked the door because I panicked. And when the smoke got thick, I told myself you'd gotten out. That someone else found you. I made myself believe it. He reached into his jacket pocket, pulling out something he hadn't remembered having until this moment. The other name tag. Burned around the edges, but unmistakable. James. He placed it beside hers. I was your brother, he said. And I let you die. The temperature dropped. Then rose. Heat flared in the room, sudden and violent, the illusion of flames dancing along the walls, but not consuming. Not real. Not this time. A form began to materialize in front of him, slowly, like smoke coalescing into shape. Maddie. 7 years old. Dress intact. Face unburned. Looking at him not with hatred, but with something worse. Disappointment. You watch me die, she repeated. He shook his head, sobbing. I couldn't look away. I thought, if I saw it happen, I'd never forget. And if I never forgot, I'd never let myself be happy again. Her eyes were ancient now, beyond her years, beyond his comprehension. That's not justice, she said softly. That's punishment. And then she stepped closer, tiny hands reaching toward his. Do you want to make it right? James looked up, broken. Yes. The room disappeared, and he was no longer sitting. He was standing in front of a police station, the box of matches in one hand, the photo in the other, and on his tongue, every word he had never dared to say. James didn't remember walking to the station. He didn't remember changing clothes, or the hours between stepping out of that phantom classroom and finding himself beneath the harsh fluorescent lights of Fairfield Police Department. But he remembered the words he said at the front desk. Every one of them. Clear. Sharp. I need to confess to something that happened 20 years ago. They led him to his small room with beige walls and a flickering overhead light. No cuffs. No judgment. Just the slow ticking of a clock on the wall and the weight of the truth he'd carried like a tumor inside his chest. He told them everything. How he brought his younger half-sister, Maddie Albright, to the school on the day of the fire. How he'd let her stay hidden while he wandered the halls, proud to show her his world. How the fire started, a faulty outlet, maybe, or a careless flick of a switch, and how he panicked. How he locked the door behind her. How he lied. The detectives looked stunned. One left the room. The other stayed. You're saying you were never questioned? Never listed as a witness? James shook his head. I told them I was alone, that I ran as soon as I smelled smoke. I told them I didn't know who the little girl was. The detective stared for a long time. Finally, there's something you need to see. He returned minutes later with a file. Yellowed, cracked, stamped with red ink, archived, unresolved. James opened it with trembling hands. Photos, notes, the scene, and then a typed report from 2005. Fire response logs, eyewitness statements. He flipped through until one name froze him. Maddie Albright. No record of enrollment. No matching school file. Possible misidentification. Remains unconfirmed. Beneath it, a line written in pen, shaky and rushed. One student claims he saw her leave the building with another child before the fire reached that wing. James stared at it. No, he whispered. That's not. She didn't make it out. But then came the photo. It wasn't one he'd seen before. A grainy image captured by a firefighter's helmet cam. Children being led from the building. Chaos. Smoke. And in the bottom right corner, a blur of red and blonde. Maddie. Being pulled by a teacher. Alive. James's breath caught. He turned the page. Maddie Albright located 5 days later. Severe smoke inhalation. Amnesia. No known family. Placed in state care. Renamed. He read the name. Madeline Rose Carpenter. His world tilted. The caseworker's note from 2006. Subject has no memory of prior life. Adoption pending. James's heart pounded like a war drum. She lived. He didn't kill her. He didn't lock her in to die. But then why did she come back? He found the answer scrawled in a margin, almost an afterthought. Child asked daily, why didn't my brother come back for me? The punishment had never been about death. It had been about abandonment. She hadn't died in the fire. But James had. Not his body, his self. He buried himself beneath guilt, shame, and a lie so heavy it rewrote his memory. His penance became hallucination. His mind, a haunted house. He thought he saw a ghost. What he'd really seen was a memory. A memory of the little girl he left behind, not in the flames, but in the silence that followed. The caseworker's address was listed. That night, James stood outside a modest white house in the suburbs, the photo in one hand. He rang the bell. A young woman answered. Blonde. 27 now. Her eyes met his. And in that moment, a flicker. Recognition. Maddie, he whispered. Her lips trembled. James? And just like that, the fire was finally over. But the smoke would take a lifetime to clear.